Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Good Bounce, the nuBound podcast. I'm your host, Mark Connell, the founder and CEO of nuBound, the sports recovery supplement. Joining us this afternoon is world-class marathoner, powerlifter, and, since last Saturday, ultra-marathoner Ryan Hall. Ryan's been a standout in the American running scene since the early 2000s when he was in high school. In 2007, he set the still existing American half marathon record, and then in 2011 at the Boston Marathon, Ryan ran the fastest ever marathon by an American runner. Ryan followed those two feats up by representing the US in the Olympics in 2008 and then again in 2012. The thing about Ryan, though, that impresses me more than these accomplishments is Ryan's ability to draw lessons from these accomplishments and draw insights from his experience. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Ryan Hall. Ryan, thanks for being here this afternoon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So maybe here at the beginning, it's useful to talk about, give people an overview of the arc of your career, kind of how you started as an athlete, what happened during your competitive days, and then talk a bit about powerlifting and what's going on these days. I know there's a great story about how, as a 13-year-old, you found your calling in life in running. Maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah, for sure. I grew up just like sports mad. I was in the middle of five kids. Grew up in Big Bear Lake in Southern California. And my dad, he was drafted by the Baltimore Orioles, ended up not going to play for them, and went to do a teaching exchange in Australia. But he just as a family is just always ingrained in us, just like sports. So played baseball, basketball, and football. And I really wanted to follow my dad's footsteps and play professional baseball. So that was always my big dream growing up. I'd spend hours and hours throwing against a tarp my dad had set up in my backyard growing up as a kid, and always outside, always active, always doing stuff, but had zero desire to run. Like running was not my thing at all, even though like I saw my dad doing it, my sister was doing it, but I just wasn't into it at all. I didn't think it was fun. That was the main thing. And so it wasn't until my eighth grade year, I was going down to a basketball game, and we, in Southern California, Big Bear Lake, where I grew up, it's a small resort town. So everywhere you go to, you have to drive off the mountain. And I'll never forget that moment. I was just looking out over the lake in my hometown and just felt like God just kind of dropped this little seed of desire in me to try and run around the lake, which it's 15 miles around the lake in Big Bear. And that was it. That was the just little gentle nudge I needed to just give a little sense of adventure and a big challenge as well. I think, that's one of the cool things. Like faith is really important to me. And I think God like knows us really well and knows like what captures us, like what gets us into something. And for me, it's like adventure, and so, fast forwarding all the way up till last Saturday, a week ago, it's the same thing. Like this big adventure just presented itself to me, and God knows, like I just can't resist a big adventure. So I hopped in my first ultra marathon without training for it at all. 43 miles here in Crested Butte, Colorado, where I currently am, and 9,000 feet of elevation gain. So it turned into a super, super long day. That was actually super similar to that first run I had when I was 13 years old around Big Bear Lake, where it wasn't pretty, and there was lots of walking involved. It wasn't like, run number one, I was floating on air and it was super easy and supernatural running. And I knew at that moment, like, I was just clicking off 5-minute miles. No, it wasn't like that at all. It was a struggle fest, right? Blisters everywhere, chafing, just pain. I was in the pain cave for a long, long time. Same thing as this last weekend, But that was the moment that just kind of kicked off my entire career. So I spent the next 20 years kind of figuring out like how good at this sport I could get and going after that with everything inside me. And then also knowing from the very beginning that like the reason why I believe like God gives all of us a gift is for our own personal enjoyment, but it's also so that we can help other people and serve other people through that. So I was also figuring out like how powerful running and sports can be as it way to change the world that we live in a positive manner, you know? So now, like, I just love sharing my story with that goal of trying to help people on their journey, and like being with you guys today. I just hope that, you know, I can share a couple things that might really encourage you and help you, and be beneficial for you on your journey. And then also too, like, there's some really tangible ways that, you know, we ended up starting our own foundation, the Hall Steps Foundation, in 2007. So this fast forwarding, no, this is 2009. Sorry, this fast forwarding quite a bit. But we saw that, like, a group of runners, we could all go do a race together, raise a bunch of money, and then put all that money to use to bring clean water to people in Zambia. Now there's like 90,000 people in Zambia that have clean water that wouldn't have had clean water if a group of runners didn't decide to get together, do this race, and do some fundraising along the way. So there are some like super, super tangible ways that your running can also like be impactful to other people on the other side of the globe. So I'm kind of going back to your question though. You know, I fell in love with running when I was 13, and I went from a kid who hated to run to a kid who was just so motivated to train. I felt like I was living in like a constant like Rocky montage, you know, like the boxing montage when he's fighting and training, and I'm up in the mountains and it's snowing. I'm out running in the snow, doing hill reps in the dark in the snow by myself. And it felt like I was training for a prize fight, you know, and then went from there. As pretty successful in high school. I set the state meet record in 1,600 meters as a senior in high school. Didn't break 4 though. That was my big goal in high school, and didn't quite get that goal. But came out in like a stud league class of Alan Webb, Dathan Ritzenheim. You know, both those guys went on to be world beaters, American record holders, and we all kind of came out in the same class and were competing against each other in high school, which was super, super fun. And I went to Stanford. Things did not go well early on at Stanford. Had a really rocky career. Actually cost our team, this is something like I don't talk a lot about, but cost our team the national cross country title, NCAA Division I cross country title. We lost that day by 1 point, and I was our 7th runner. And I ran terrible. I should have been like our 5th guy scoring for us, and I should have run way faster than I did, but just had
you were
a
just
terrible.
A placer down in 7.
Yeah. And so we lost that day to Colorado by 1 point, and oh man, that's still one that like stings to this day, but a part of the journey, you know. It's like I had a lot more bad races than I did good races. And I think that's something that's important to be said, because I think oftentimes people see pro runners, they just see the highlight reel, they see the races you really pop, but they don't see all the tons and tons of
the records,
races.
the successes.
Yes, exactly. So, go ahead, Mark.
There's a great quote from Michael Jordan about the source of his success being all the times he's failed, all the times he's failed to make a winning shot, all the times he's come up short, and his lesson taken from there was, even in bad situations you learn something. It's those bad situations that give you the power and give you the wisdom to pursue the good ones. Yeah,
and I think also too, it's like, yeah, I watched his recent the documentary series that came out on him, you know, The Last Dance. And what really struck me is, like, I knew like he took so many game-winning shots and missed them, you know, but he still like wanted the ball so bad, right? Like in those moments, like that last, you know, series when it was game 6 and there was 5 seconds left and he hit that last shot of his, you know, when they won the 6th in a row. Like, I remember Dennis Rodman saying, he's like, I was just like, get out of the way. Like, there's no way. He's not dishing that ball to anyone. Like, he is going to take the shot. And what really like captured me about that is this mentality of like his view of failure, right? It's like he's taken the shot so many times and missed it, and yet he still wants that ball so bad when he's in that crunch time. Like, he still wants to take that shot, you know? So that was really like inspiring for me, and something that I experienced in my career is like flipping the view of failure and seeing it as a part of the journey, a part of the process, and not taking your failure personally and seeing yourself oh, because I missed that game-winning shot, I'm a failure. I always miss the game-winning shot. Instead of having that narrative going through your head, it's rather like, give me the ball. I want to take this shot, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think learning to frame how we see failure differently is so, so important as an athlete and then in life in general. It's just being like, failure is something that happens to everyone. It is not me. It's like something I can observe that's outside of myself, and I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
take it personally. And I see the African guys that I would race against professionally, the Boston Marathon, London Marathon, they would do such a great job of this. Like most of the guys, they go out super hard, they bomb. They might not even finish the race or they run terrible. And yet, like, they're laughing afterwards and joking around with each other. Like, I can't tell which one of the African guys had a good race or a bad race because they're all just
Yeah.
acting the same, you know? Like, they don't take their failure personally. Whereas, like myself, I used to take it so, so personally. So much so that when I was playing baseball when I was 13, if I'd strike out at the plate, I'd start crying afterwards, right? Like, that's how personal my failure was to me. And so I had to travel a long, long journey of experiencing failure after failure after failure and learning that, hey, I need to shift the way I see failure. And now, like, failure is such an integral part of my daily routine. Like, I have to fail every single day. And so, like, I go into the weight room and that is the goal, is like, let's fail today. Because I know if I'm failing, I'm getting stronger, I'm growing, I'm improving. Like, failure is the
Mm-hmm.
resistance that I need to accomplish my goals. Without failure, like, I'm not going to get there. Same thing
Yeah.
in the running space. It's like, you have to fail. You have to go out hard sometimes and blow up and maybe not even finish the race or finish your train effort. Like, that is part of the path. Injuries is another part of, like, the sport that I don't necessarily like, but it's a aspect of failure of, like, your body telling you, like, hey, like, you went too far here, or you did something
Mm-hmm.
wrong, or maybe you didn't even do something wrong. Your body just gave out under you. And that's all, like, a part of the athletic journey.
Well, and it's a part of every journey in life. It's athletics or anything we attempt in life. We'll come up short. We'll come up short more times than we'll succeed. And
Absolutely.
what makes someone able to persevere and pursue a goal over the long term is not that they won every, not that they won at every pass, but that when they fail, they learn something and they come back smarter the next time.
Yeah, and even, like, the ability to forget your failure. I remember this
Mm-hmm.
one time I actually had a really good race at US Cross Country Championships. I forget the year. I think it's 2006. I won the 12K, and I think I won both of them. I won the 4K and the 12K. But uh, I remember I was riding back in the bus afterwards, and, like, the bus driver had this radio station on, and he was a sports psychologist, and he was talking about how, like, athletes need to have sports amnesia to their bad performances. How you got to
Mm-hmm.
just, like you said, Mark, you got to learn from it. Like, that's definitely, you don't want to miss the value in your failure, but then there has to become almost a switch where you just turn it on, and it's just like, poof, it's gone. You know, it's like
Yeah.
you forget about it. And so you're not dragging that failure with you to the next starting line, to that next shot you're taking at the buzzer. Like, that failure is not looming back here. It's like gone in your mind. And that's a skill you can develop, you know, like teaching yourself, okay, I'm going to give myself a time frame here where I'm going to learn from my mistake. I'm going to allow myself to be disappointed with my failure. But then after whatever the time frame is, a day, I'm going to forget about it. I'm going to keep moving on. I'm going to just, that failure is gone. And that was something I think I was able to do really well before I ran 204 in Boston. Was I ran a month before that, I ran one of my worst races of all time at the New York City Half Marathon. And I had no idea why I ran so bad. And those are the hardest failures to get over. Like, the failures where you get hurt or you're sick or there's something very tangible you can identify are pretty
Mm-hmm.
easy to get over. The ones where you're
Sure.
just like, I don't know, like, I was just flat as a pancake, felt terrible. and even though like my training had been clicking super well and I felt like I was in really, really good shape, for whatever reason, like my body was just not performing well that day. And ran terrible. And I was super bummed out afterwards. I was so bummed out that I walked like 7 miles from the finish line back to our hotel just to try and like sort it out in my mind. And it did not, that actually didn't work at all either. But what did work was just like waking up the next morning and being like, okay, like forget about what just happened. I haven't been able to wrap my head around it, haven't been able to figure it out, but I got Boston in 1 month from now. And I gotta just put this behind me and keep moving forward. And that's always, was one strategy that's super helpful for me in the wake of disappointment, is just to simply keep moving forward. Look at the calendar. What is my next race? How am I going to change things around here so that I am firing and feeling good? And the crazy thing was, after that New York City Marathon, it like woke me up. I don't know. I still can't physiologically explain what happened in my legs and in my body. But for whatever reason, I went from just, like I said, as flat as a pancake in the race.
Just average.
Yeah, to feeling like $1,000,000 like that. And I was flying on like all of my runs, every easy run, every workout, like just popping stuff. Even so much so that like I was having a really hard time holding myself back. And I'm usually really good. Like my training philosophy is always like, make your easy days easy and your hard days really hard. Like try and recover as much as possible on your easy days, but really try and nail your workouts. But in this build, I was feeling so good that I wasn't even trying to run hard on my easy days. And I was just flying, running like 5:30 pace, like without even trying. I remember the day before Boston, I go and do a 30-minute easy run, some drills and strides. That's kind of my customary pre-race routine. And I remember during that 3-minute run, I was just flying, just running like 5:30 pace out along the river there. And I remember being scared of Sarah. I was like, if Sarah sees me doing this right now, I'm in big trouble because you're not supposed to be running this fast the day before a race. But I couldn't help it. Like my legs were just feeling good. And then we hit the perfect weather day that day. We had the wind at our back the whole way. Yeah. Yep. And so it just presented like the perfect opportunity. But I could have missed it if I was still thinking about, well, I just ran like 66 minutes for a half marathon. Like I shouldn't go out faster than that. Right. But like if I would have been thinking like, don't go out faster than that, because if you do, you're really going to blow up here because you're going twice the distance. No. Like in my mind, I was like, I'm not letting 1 mile go by without trying to maximize my performance. Like I'm not letting 1 second go here. Like I'm going to push the entire way. So we actually came through the half marathon, and still it's like the third fastest half marathon I've ever run in my life was the first half of the Boston Marathon that day. We were like 61:52 or something like that. And like if I was doubtful because of that last race, if I was thinking about that last race in my mind, that would not have happened. There's no way I run 2:04. So it's really, really important, I think, for people to be like, our past failures cannot go to the next starting line with us.
Yeah, and that attitude about life, the notion that life operates on a sunk cost basis. Whatever you've done in the past, that's the past.
Yeah.
The only thing that matters is what are you doing today and what's your path to tomorrow.
Totally. And I was thinking about this actually today in the weight room, because I think in any endeavor that you're going on, whether it's like lifting for me or running back then, usually the results are so small and they take so long. Like one of the biggest attributes I think for a successful athlete is patience, because like big breakthroughs, they're super fun when they happen, but honestly, like they don't happen very often. Usually it's like getting better at a sport is like watching your hair grow. It's that kind of slow, So it's really easy to be in the weight room sometimes and be like, man, this is the same weight I was using a month ago and I'm not making progress. And like, you do need to pay attention to that, because maybe you do need to be making some tweaks. But ultimately, like, you got to just keep moving forward, right? And it's consistency over a long period of time is what like great performances are all built on. So like I have to remind myself of that all the time, being like, all right, I see like you're a little bit discouraged today, but you know what? We just got to keep moving forward. Maybe what tweaks do we need to make here? How can I tinker with stuff a little bit, whether it's my nutrition or my sleep or my training splits, or what can I change here to elicit a better response? But ultimately, I got to just take another positive step forward today.
Yeah. Well, and progress in the weight room, if you're thinking about progress over the course of a month or 2 months, that's the wrong time frame. You need to be looking at what's going on over the course of 6 months, 12 months. Where am I going to be 2 years from now?
Totally. Yep. And I think that's a problem I see a lot of runners make is they put a time stamp on their goals, right? It's like, I got to hit X time in a year from now or 2 years from now. And sometimes like we just don't give ourselves enough time, right? So yeah, I'm totally with you.
Yeah. Well, that's actually one of the things that I wanted to talk about was, as an athlete during your competitive days, you tended to go all out and work your body very hard. You didn't have a lot of patience with yourself during your competitive days. Is that the?
Well,
does that seem right to you?
I pushed the limits. So I was aggressive. Was I patient in my training? I would say yes, because I wasn't like going from like 0 to 100, like I was taking incremental steps. But I was extremely aggressive and I was not afraid to cross the line. And so I think that's what you saw a lot in my career, and is also why like I wasn't the most consistent guy in the world, is because I was always like pushing the limits, and I had to do that, to be honest. Like, to run at the level I ran at, I had to explore what my body was capable of doing. And I definitely did that. And so now it's kind of a satisfying thing to be able to sit back from that and be like, I couldn't have trained any harder. Like, that's for sure. Like, I pushed that envelope as hard as I possibly could have, like it's really easy to sit back and like maybe identify some things I did do wrong and that I would do differently going forward. I think for me personally, one of the biggest thing I can look back at and be like, I wish I would have done this differently, is 5K speed was never something that came natural to me. Like, I had to work for a really, really long time to get in really good 5K shape. But there's such a strong correlation between how fast you are over 5K and how fast you are over a marathon. Especially now, like looking at the best guys in the world, it's like, if you want to be a world-class marathoner, you're competing with Bekele and Kipchoge, and these guys have unreal 5K speed, right? And even like unreal like mile speed. So that is something that I think, looking back on, I'm like, I should have been more intentional about always keeping my 5K speed good and even trying to improve upon my 5K speed. I ran 13:16 at Stanford during my senior year, but the further away from that 5K speed I got, the harder and harder the marathon got. So, as I look back at it, I'm like, I kind of think I should have just done one marathon a year and spent the whole rest of the year just focusing on 5K development. But, I love the marathon. I love competing. And it's one of those things it's so easy to see it when you look back at it. But when you're in the moment, you're just like, oh, I just want to run another marathon. You're just so excited about it. And I knew I needed to keep my 5K speed close at hand. Like, my coaches were telling me that. It's just, I was so excited about the marathon. I had a hard time not doing 2 a year. But now, in my coaching of other athletes, I certainly like make sure that's a big part of their program. And there's a lot of individual variation on it, right? So like Sarah, I'm coaching her, my wife, and she's ran 2:22 a year ago. And for her, like 5K fitness and her leg speed is always pretty good. So we don't have to be quite as intentional with keeping that close as hand as we would if someone like myself, who 5K fitness is really hard to come by. That kind of person needs to spend even more time working on their 5K fitness. And I think that's where coaching is super, super helpful, is the coach makes you do stuff you don't want to do and you don't feel like doing. And, that's kind of what I lost when I went out on the whole like faith-based coaching, is I didn't have, it was the faith aspect of it was awesome. Like I felt super close to God, and it was super helpful internally to like have this time period of having God as my coach or whatever. But I should have had more kind of outside counsel that's looking in from the situation and being like, you really need to work on your 5K speed here. Like you really got to keep that close at hand. And having someone who's outside observing in is always super helpful.
So how would the Ryan Hall of today, the coach of today, how would you handle an athlete like the Ryan Hall of, say, 2014, 2015?
Yeah.
How would you make the case that, look, you got to be working on your endurance is good, working your speed?
I think for me, I can be pretty stubborn, pretty like hard nosed, but I will listen to people who have gone the road before me, right? So if someone has like done what I want to do, like I will listen to them, I have a hard time like trusting people who are telling me stuff like based on science, even because usually like science just, and I'm not against science, like I use science in our training, but usually like science just confirms what we have already experienced to be true in the real world. That's usually kind of how it goes. So like for me, if I was being coached by someone who'd run 204 before, I think I would be I'd be listening, I'd be not just listening, but actually receiving and wanting to do what he says. So I think that's, I know like there's like kind of a controversy amongst like just everyday runners of like, should you be coached by like a high level athlete? Cause they're just going to train you like them. They're going to burn you out and train you super hard. Whereas like, we weren't always high level athletes. Like I know what it's like to be, off the couch. I just ran ultra marathon off the couch. And like when I was first getting going in the sport, like I know what it's like to come from scratch, so we can relate to athletes at that level. But from my perspective, it's like, I want to be listening to someone I know I can trust. And I think that's probably the most important component of an athlete coach relationship, is that element of trust. So now like we have run free training, we have coaches that we train that they are coaching athletes personally, sending them weekly training from week to week. And it's a whole like holistic approach to training. So one thing that I've learned over the years is like just getting the training right is one small component, right? Like you can be doing the perfect training plan, but if your nutrition isn't on point, if your sleep isn't on point, if you're not doing little things right, like having the right pair of shoes, for example, like these are all things that, it can all throw everything out the door. So you got to have a holistic approach to no matter what your goals are. If your goal is just to like run your first marathon, run a PR in the 5K, like qualify for Boston, whatever it is, like if you want to maximize your performance, you got to be addressing like your whole being, because when you run, your whole being is out there running, and it's all like your ability to recover is really what limits how hard you can train and how fast you're going to get. So every element that's related to recovery is super, super important to address. So that's like what our training system is based on. It's like we address nutrition, we address sleep, I watch every runner, they film videos of them. We watch them run. We're looking at their form. So it's like a whole, like complete holistic approach to training that isn't often out there in online coaching. So that's kind of like what makes Run Free different than other coaching platforms. But I got totally off track there. What was the question? The coach athlete relationship is what I was talking about. Is like having this element of trust is the most important thing, And so like if I would have had a coach and I did like have a ton of respect for my coaches. Like I had amazing coaches, like working with some of the best coaches in the world. But for me to like really receive and listen to a coach, just that element, that huge history of trust has to be built. And I'd always have an easier time trusting people who have been to the top of the mountain, who know the route up there. They know what to look for. They know things to avoid on the route, and they know the best way to go. And for me, it's a lot easier to receive information from those kind of people.
Yeah. Yes. But let me ask you a question about the big transition in your life. So in January of 2016, you retired from as a professional. So you retired from professional running, and I know the two of us had gotten together. We were talking at the Falmouth Road Race that summer, and I was doing some powerlifting competitions. You were starting to lift, and it's funny at the time. I was thinking, gee, here's this guy who's, an elite world class runner. How is he going to make much progress powerlifting? And and then the next time I saw you, I saw your face, and I thought, oh, Ryan has photoshopped his head on someone else's body. He can't be that ripped.
Oh yeah,
So it would be wonderful to get some insight into what you did to go from a world class elite endurance athlete, kind of a guy who was fighting a catabolic training program, to how did you get into an anabolic training program and make such progress?
yeah. Well, I'm certainly fighting my genetics for sure. Like, this isn't something that comes natural to me, which is kind of what makes it fun, right? It's like I spent 20 years doing something that I was naturally built to do, gifted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Having a smaller frame, being a smaller person, and the endurance stuff has just always come natural to me. But the lifting does not come natural to me at all. I'm not a naturally strong dude, not a naturally big guy. And so when I retired from pro running, my body was just so run down. And I don't think, this has to be the case for runners. I don't think runners need to be afraid of training hard and training a lot. But if you're going to train how I was training, you're going to put yourself in a little bit of I don't know, a situation where your body might need a break from that for a while, And I think it was largely because of a weight issue. So I'm in the middle of 5 kids. My brother, who doesn't do any activity, I mean, he's generally athletic, but he doesn't like train or anything for weightlifting or running. He's just kind of a normal dude. He walks around at like 165 pounds, right? So that's probably like my natural body weight. And yet here I am.
Dad?
Craig,
Great.
my
Okay.
one of my younger brothers. Yeah, Chad is a mountain biker and endurance athlete, so he's a lot lighter than normal. But Craig is 165 pounds, normal dude. And so I would probably be the same weight if I was a normal guy, and yet here I am, a pro marathoner, running my best stuff at 137 pounds at 5'10". And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit underweight, right? And anytime you're like pretty outside of where your body wants to sit, that's not a super healthy position to be in. Like people who are, like Sarah, my wife, for example, she's naturally pretty small. Like she probably, if she didn't run at all, she'd maybe be like 5 pounds heavier, maybe, I don't know, maybe even the same weight. And so for her,
Mm-hmm.
like being a marathoner is not a stretch for her body. Like her body's is in a healthy position, like all throughout the year. Whereas for me, I'm 20, 25 pounds under. And so my testosterone's super low, feeling fatigued all the time. And my body's just really catabolic, just like stripping itself of everything it doesn't need. And doing that for 20 years, training at 100 plus miles a week and pushing the envelope and dieting down to get down to race weight is just not a super sustainable, healthy place to be in. So when I retired, I was like, okay, I need to start giving back to my body. And so how can I do that? Like weights was the antithesis to what I was doing with the running, right? It was like so
Mm-hmm.
anabolic. I started eating a lot more calories. I started lifting weights, which was building muscle and strength. And I was so weak when I started. I think, I retired at like 127 pounds. I actually got even lighter than I was racing at, which was a really bad call. Kind of bought into the lie that like the lighter you get, the faster you are, and
Sure.
was in a
Sure.
really, really bad spot. So I was benching probably like, I don't know, 130 pounds, like the same for the deadlift and squat, just like so embarrassed and so scrawny and so weak. But the fun thing is I had nowhere to go but up, right? Like when you're that weak
Mm-hmm.
and that bad at something, like you have so much room for growth. So I saw pretty drastic results right away, as lifters do, in the first 6
Yeah.
months to a
Yeah.
year. Usually see
Yeah. When
really
you
good
start
progress.
lifting, you see a lot of changes in that
Yeah,
first few months.
which is super, super fun. It really like addicting. It gets you into the sport really quick. But it's funny because I hated lifting before that. I wasn't into it all. I did it as a runner, but like begrudgingly, didn't enjoy it. Just tried to hustle through my workouts, you know. And but then when I got into it, that's the thing about me. When I'm in something, I'm like really into it. When I'm out of it, I'm like really out of it. So like I pretty much stopped running altogether. I was running a couple days a week, maybe, just like easy 30 minutes here and there. But for the most part, just like lift, and have just seen really fun progress. What it helped me transition from running from the pro lifestyle, because what I was able to identify that really captured me about running is I love the physical challenge, and I love to push myself, and I'm addicted to seeing my body change and grow and adapt. I love results, right? So knowing that about myself, I'm like, okay, I can't meet these needs that I have as a person and as an athlete with running anymore. So how can I meet them? And it was through lifting. I was able to like tick each one of those boxes, you know, and it made the transition out of pro running super smooth and kind of seamless for me. And I was just loving it. So, you know, to this day, I'm in the gym every single day, 60 and 90 minutes a day, and always tinkering and stuff and still figuring stuff out. You know, I'm not like, you know, running is my craft. It's my passion. It's what I really know the best. It's, you know, I coach people in running because that's my jam, right? Lifting is still, I've been doing it for 5 years. I'm getting better, but I have a lot to learn in the running space too, but in the lifting space, I mean, I'm just like a newbie, and I wouldn't feel confident like coaching anyone in that space, but it's kind of fun to share stuff on the journey that's been helpful for me in both the nutrition and lifting category. And I like to think outside the box. I like to experiment, try new stuff, and have been able to get myself into a fairly strong spot, and, you know, walking around now at like 175 pounds and can deadlift. Like I hit 462 in the deadlift the other day, and right around 390 in the squat and 290 on the bench. So I'm getting there. I'm making progress, and it's super fun. And it's all just hobby level stuff. It's like, I'm not doing any competitions. I'm not like, you know, I give myself 60 to 90 minutes a day to be selfish and get some testosterone going and have fun in the gym. And then the rest of my day is spent, you know, working on run free stuff or supporting Sarah in her running, or, you know, I have 4 kids, so helping them with online school or whatever they have going on, driving them around. So, you know, most of my day is not spent thinking about lifting or doing lifting, but super, super fun, healthy hobby that I've gotten into that's been really life-giving to me.
Absolutely. Well, and the great thing about being in the weight room is you get that feedback. You get it in the moment. You either move the weight or you don't.
Totally.
You know, you know in an instant whether you've gotten it done.
I love that. And there's like I guess you can cheat with form, but like, you know, you can't pretend to like put 300 pounds on your chest and get it back up. Like it's either there or it's not, you know, it's either you're getting results or you're not. So it's super fun. It can be, and it's like any pursuit. It can be frustrating at times when you feel like you're going through little plateaus and you're trying to figure out how you can tinker with things and make things different. But, you know, I've learned to just embrace that as like, that's part of the process, and failure makes you kind of chew on things and like and I do that sometimes. Like when I'm stuck in a lift, I'll just be like in bed at night, just like chewing on, being like, what can I do differently here? How can I switch things up? And that's all like part of the process.
What other assistance exercises can I add in that will move me from, you know, off this plateau to the next?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned your daughters and family, and that's a fascinating chapter of life for you and Sarah. The two of you adopted a total of 4 sisters.
Yes.
So you went from Ryan Hall lives a high risk life. You go from 0 children to 4 children
overnight
in a week.
Yes. Yeah, it was quite the change.
How did that happen, and how is fatherhood treating you? I mean, obviously you're a great father.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm learning in that category as well. But yeah, so
you know, being a parent, it's all about making mistakes. Nobody's a perfect parent. it's just a series of mistakes that you sum up and get somewhere better at the end.
Totally. I loved hearing this one piece of advice that I forget who I heard it from, but they were talking to their kids and they're being like, you know what? Like, we're all growing up together, actually. It's not like the kids are growing up and the parents aren't. It's like parents are growing up too and we're getting it wrong and we're figuring it out. So I try to take like a very like humble approach to it that way. And it's helpful for me just personally. So when I think it's so easy to just beat yourself up over a parent. I think like even more so than like athletically, like you just, I don't know, like I feel like my temper sometimes can be, my patience is short with the kids, you know, it's like why did I react that way? Or like, why did I have that tone of voice? You know, there's just there's a million things that I feel like I can beat myself up over on any given day, you know? And so like having a mind frame of like a growth mindset, you know, is kind of a popular term these days. But I think it's really important for us as parents to have that same kind of growth mindset and being like, all right, yeah, I missed that one, but I'm not going to beat myself up over it. I'm just going to, you know, learn from that and grow from that. And it's going to make me better going forward.
Yeah. Well, and that circles around to your comment about leaving, being able to forget failures and move forward with the present.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you gotta just, otherwise, if you just keep beating yourself up, it just kills your confidence, you know? And then when your confidence is down, then you make more mistakes and you do even worse and worse. It's like anything, like lifting, basketball. Like if you see that shot going in before you take it, you know, and I'll do this, like when I'm lifting, if I'm about to try and pull a PR in the deadlift, like I sit down on the bench, I close my eyes, and I see myself like hitting that lift, like as many times as I can see it in like 2 or 3 minutes before I try for it, you know? And that's so powerful when you got to know the weight's going up. When you touch the bar, you got to be like, up, it's just going up. Like there's no other option, you know? And same thing in everything in life. It's like, if you think you're good at something, you're going to perform a lot better, right? If you think you're a good parent, you're going to be a better parent. If you think you're a terrible parent, like you're going to do things that are going to confirm that belief about yourself. It's like whatever we believe about ourselves, it's going to come out. So it's like, well, then I got to shape beliefs that I want to have about myself so that those things can come out of me.
Yeah. Well, and it's the old truism is, if you think you can do it, you can. And if you think you can't do it, you're right.
Yeah.
If you think you can't do it, you won't be able to. You have to have confidence in what you're doing.
Yeah. If you don't think that weight's coming up, it's not. For sure, it's not.
Well, so let's jump now to the ultra marathon. So I kind of was following your posts on Instagram. So your one of your runners, Meta, came to you and said, "Hey Ryan, I'm in Crested Butte. I'm going to run this 43-mile ultra marathon. You know, you're my coach. Will you let me do it?" And 3 weeks before the race, you said, "Oh yeah, okay, I'll do it too."
Yeah, it was one of those things. I just like looked it up, and something you gotta know about me is like the mountains just make me come to life. It's like I grew up in the mountains. It's, you know, people talk like beach or mountains, and for me, it's like mountains every time. Like I just fall in love with the mountains. I could just be out in them all day long. Just love just looking at them. So, you know, Crested Butte has some beautiful mountains, but I've never been very far back in the mountains. So this race just goes like way back in the mountains up to Star Pass, 12,300 feet, and just like epic views. And
then goes over to Aspen.
Well, typically, yes. This year, because of COVID, they weren't able to go into Aspen. So it turned into a big loop this year. So different course, but just spectacular all around. It was just unreal. So it's just one of those things that made zero sense physically. Like I had only done 5 runs in 2020 leading up to that. My longest run was 7 miles. So, you know, didn't make sense at all, but just something that captured me. And I think that's something as a coach now too, I try and pay attention to and try and check in with my athletes on is like, what makes you come to life? Like what goal can you have that you are just like beyond stoked about. You're just like, I can't wait for this. Like that, those are the kind of goals we need that are really gonna draw out maximal motivation in our training and living.
Hmm.
So even if it might not make a ton of sense, like for my athlete Meta, she just finished a 5K training block. She was supposed to be on break, but she'd always really wanted to do this race, and I could tell like it was going to be something that's going to make her come to life and be a really cool, fun experience. And I think sometimes I can become so focused on performance and the end goal, it's really easy to lose sight of like today and how beautiful today is, and the opportunities and the moments that we encounter all along the way to that end goal, you know? So I think every once in a while it's okay to take our eyes off the mountaintop and just enjoy the view around us and do some things that make us come to life. So yeah, we hopped in this ultra, and we were definitely the two most underprepared athletes on the start line, you know, like her coming off 5K training and me coming off essentially zero training altogether. But one thing that's really interesting was, so we're at 9,000 feet too, and there's 9,000 feet of elevation gain in this course. So a ton of elevation. But what was interesting is I found that I was actually never really out of breath. Like cardiovascularly, I was fine. Actually, like I was in the gym the next day. I was like, why am I breathing way harder, like doing bench press and like pull up supersetting than I am like running up a mountain at 12,000 feet? But it's just a different kind of like the intensity level is so low when you're going that far and that long, you know? So
Hmm.
cardiovascularly, I was good just from doing the weight training. And I always keep my rest like fairly short. My rest is usually pretty long on my bigger lifts when I'm trying to go heavier. I might take
Yeah,
2 minutes
yeah.
or something like that. But usually like it's more like a minute to 45 seconds. So that actually keeps me in fairly good cardiovascular shape, but my legs just weren't used to the pounding at all. So after an hour into this race, my legs just felt like lead, and yet I still had 11 hours and 45 minutes to go. Yeah, it turned into a 12-hour and 45-minute roughly expedition of Crested Butte, but you know, I made it, and it was a cool experience, and it's kind of fun too to like show my kids, because they never saw me race in person, but they were out there on the race course and at the finish line, just to show them that, hey, like we can do hard things, like even when we're not really prepared to do it. And I'm not like, you know, at home telling them like, ah, guys, you don't need to train, like that's overrated. I mean, like I performance wise, like I was terrible, right? Like I was walking a good part of it, I was going super slow, but you can like get the mission accomplished, you can finish.
Well, it seems more like a mental, a spiritual goal than a performance goal. You weren't going out there to win the Grand
No.
Traverse. You were going out there to run it.
Yes, exactly. It's funny though, because I think some people thought I was like competitive and like trying to win or something, but they must not follow me on Instagram, because I made it pretty clear that like, hey, I've only run a couple times. I don't even know if I can finish this thing, you know? But like, I had a couple people who they would pass me towards the end of the race, and they're like, "What are you doing back here?" Like they thought I was just like going and cooling down with an athlete or something. Like I must have finished like hours ago. I was like, no, like I'm out here with you guys, just taking the long time.
I, I'm still in the event.
Yeah, yeah, I'm still going.
So let's shift gears again. So run free training. So you're a coach. If people wanna train with Ryan Hall, how do they go about doing that? How do they get into run free training, and what do they get
Yeah.
in terms of what is the training? You'd mentioned a holistic approach. Talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think a good place to start is, you know, like we're called run free training. The reason why we're called run free training is because like what I'm really interested in for athletes, what I want every single athlete to experience, whether we coach them or not, is just a sense of freedom when they're out there running, like not being weighed down by performance expectations and nervousness and fear and, you know, all those things that we all experience, right? Like it doesn't matter if you're trying to win the Olympic gold medal or you're just in a local 5K, like you can show up on that starting line with a whole bunch of weightiness on you that makes running not that much fun. So freeing people from that is like what I really want deeply for everyone across the board, whether or not they're being coached by us or not. So I think a good place to start is like the podcast. Run Free podcast is a podcast I put on, and it's just kind of like me most of the time. Like I do bring guests on every once in a while, but just kind of like monologuing about like how can we shift what's going on inside of us? Because as we've talked about in this conversation, Mark, like what is going on inside of here, it's going to come out externally, right? In what we're doing. And so like part of our holistic approach to training is like the internal game. What's going on in your mind? What's going on in your heart? What's going on in your head? And trying to work from the inside out. So instead of just addressing like, okay, let's just get you the right training and get you dialed in, and then you're going to be golden, you're off to the races. It's like, no, let's figure out what's holding you back here first. Right. And that content is free. So like, it's kind of dual meaning, Run Free. It's like, we want to free people, but we're also offering like free content, like the podcast. Consider that to be the most important information we could give people. And we want that to be accessible to everyone. So they can check that out, Run Free podcast. And then we also have the Run Free YouTube channel as well, which like tons of informational videos, going through our weights that we like to prescribe to our runners, how to run videos, how to breathe videos, drills and strides, self-massage videos, all kinds of cool content on there. Again, all of that is free, right? So we wanted to make some things just like open and free, people to feel like they can be a part of our community without even doing the paid coaching, right? Like we want to involve as many people as we can. So that's kind of our way to reach everyone. So I think that's a great way for people to start, just to like get involved with our community and then see how they like it, see how they feel. Like we don't want to bend anyone's arm into being coached by us. We just want to offer opportunity for people who think they might be a good fit with us. But I mean, it's open to every level. So oftentimes I think people think because like I'm a retired pro runner and most of our coaches are pro runners, you have to be some elite athlete to join Run Free, but that's not the case at all. It's like we have people who are just like trying to run a first 5K all the way up to people who are trying to hit like Olympic trials qualifying times and everywhere in between. So like everyone is welcome. And I just love our coaching staff. You know, we were just hanging out in Montana at a coaching retreat, and I just love like each one of these coaches has been like hand selected, and they're like friends of mine and people that I know and trust and have worked with. So just love our coaches. I would entrust like any athlete to any one of our coaches. And so if they want to actually like jump on board and be trained with us, you go to runfreetraining.com, check out our website, and then on there you can do a athlete inquiry, fill out just a little thing, and we'll get in touch with you and get you dialed in with training that's going to include everything. Like I said, we're going to look at your nutrition. We're going to look at your sleep patterns. Like I said, we're going to look at the mental game through the podcast. We're going to do weight training for you. Like we have a 1% category where we're talking about all the little things you can do to just get a little bit better. So I'm really excited about what we're doing at Run Free. And it's also kind of a way for me to continue the journey. You know, it's like when during my journey, it felt like for a while, like it was about me trying to maximize my performance. What I've learned is like all of our journeys are meant to be shared, right? And we go on these journeys so that we can help other people. And so this is a way for me to continue to do that, to be able to have all of my failures that I experienced in my career, to get to impart that to other people so that they don't make those same failures. And that's like deeply gratifying for me.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the website. I'm looking at the 1% section, and in there, one of the things you call out in 1% is flexibility.
Yep.
And I kind of two things I've started doing, you know, during the time of COVID here. I added these on as personal goals around flexibility. One is I've started working on handstands.
Oh, nice.
So working on balance and so working on handstands, and then the other, I had always said, you know, I'm not very flexible. I'm not very flexible. I've decided to make a goal for myself that I should get a split.
Oh, whoa, really? Nice.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny. I'd always kind of put it off and said, you know, that's yoga. It's like my body type just can't do it. But you know, I've been looking and realized the one thing I saw, do you know the, what's the the Belgian Jean-Claude Van Damme. Have you seen
It's so
the
funny.
split he does between the two trucks?
Yeah, it's funny. When you said splits, have you seen Bloodsport, that movie? It's
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
yeah. So I instantly was trying to I was getting an image of you with like ropes tied behind your legs, and you know how they like rip his legs apart. I want to get a picture of you like that, Mark, like just legs ripped apart from you.
Well, we'll do it. I've got a long way to go, but it's kind of a journey starts with taking a first step on the path, and that's what
Totally.
I liked about your 1% notion is you don't have to, this can be something that adds into what you're doing.
Totally. Yeah. And it doesn't have to take forever too, you know? I think that's the thing. I know for myself, like if something I'm adding into my routine is only going to take like 5 minutes, I'm much more
Hmm.
likely to do it than if like, oh, I got to spend an hour doing flexibility today. It's like, that's probably going to last for like about a week. And then I'm gonna be like, forget this, it's taking too much time. So,
Yeah,
learning to also put things in their place and being like, you prioritize what's important and then spend your time and energy accordingly, and things like flexibility, it's like you can get a lot done. Like one of our videos is like my dynamic flexibility routine that I do before every single run, but their whole routine took me like 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And so it's like, hey, I have 3 or 4 minutes to do this routine before I run. So I think just making sure that's not like trying to commit to too much, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. You don't have to make flexibility the whole workout,
Right.
but even if you're putting a few minutes of flexibility into your workout during the day, you know, adding up, it's not what happens this month, it's not what happens next month. It's where are you 12 months from now?
Yep, absolutely.
3 or 4 minutes a day over the course of a year. That's that's 1,000 minutes. That's a long time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's when change happens. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But you pursuing it with patience and continuing to push forward. Eventually, you get much further than you could imagine.
yep, yep. I know. That's what I've noticed over and over again with amazing athletes. It's like usually they don't do something amazing like every single day. It's just little things compounding interest over years and years and years.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's yeah. You lift you lift and you lift consistently, and that you get a compound interest effect there, and
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
what and that's what makes a difference in anything in life. It doesn't have to be just physical activity. Spend if you spend 10-20 minutes a day meditating or reflecting, that that builds, that gives you something over the course of time.
Absolutely. Yep. 100%.
So we're getting near the end of the hour here. Let me, as a final summing up question, what are three things that Ryan Hall finds to be true? What are the things that you would like to pass on to your kids or pass on to the people you're coaching? What are the three things that make a difference? We've talked
Uh,
about a lot of things this afternoon, but come back and tell me what the three are.
yeah. Oh, that's such a great question. I think for me, we've talked about belief and what you believe about yourself. And
Hmm.
for me, I went through this period of being super depressed during my time at Stanford when how I saw myself was all based on how I was performing. And I found that to be just a really, really brutal way to do life, right? And like a really depressing way to do life, even though like I was generally good at what I was doing. Like I was on scholarship at Stanford. Like I was a pretty good
Hmm.
athlete, you know? And yet I was so depressed because when I wasn't performing well, like I only valued myself based on my performances. So I think for me, knowing what makes me special, what makes me of value, what makes me of worth is something that I have to constantly be cultivating because I definitely have a tendency to try to prove myself based on my performance. And usually it's me trying to prove myself to myself. It's like even when I'm
Mm-hmm.
lifting now, like I'm lifting in my garage by myself. I'll occasionally put some videos up on Instagram and stuff, but for the most part, it's like just me in my garage. Like there's no pressure there, right? And yet like I can feel myself like drifting back into that same performance mindset of being like,
Yeah.
I gotta hit
Yeah.
this lift to prove that like I am strong. And if I'm strong, then I'm like of value and of worth and of an important person. And for me, like being able to shift my perspective to be like, actually, like my value, my worth has nothing to do with how fast I run a marathon, how much weight I can lift. Like my worth is all based on this fact that like, I really believe like God made all of us in his image. And that's what makes us special. That's what gives us value. And when I see
Mm-hmm.
myself that way, then like the performance thing just becomes like icing on the cake. It's like, yeah, I hit this lift. Great. That's super cool. But hey, if I don't hit the lift, I'm still like made in the image of God. And how incredible is that? That's really ultimately. So having that backbone thing of whatever it is for the listeners to know in the front of their mind of like what makes me special, and have that not be a performance related thing, but something completely independent of performance, I think
Mm-hmm.
is hugely beneficial. The next
Mm-hmm.
thing I would say is just I've been on this journey of changing how I see competition, and having competition not be about how good am I relative to someone else. And it's so hard to do, even as like a hobby lifter right now. You get on
Right.
Instagram, you follow like power lifters or whatever, and it can be so discouraging. They're just playing on like one finger with like weight that like you're struggling with, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
easy to just compare yourself to them and be like, why am I even doing this? Like I'm terrible at this, you know? And yet that is such a shallow way to do sports. And even when you're at the top of the sport, like I was in marathoning, like it was never fulfilling to compare myself to other people. When my goal was all based around me winning a race or setting an American record or whatever it was, winning Olympic gold medal, like it was never fulfilling to do sports that way. However, what was fulfilling was for me to just go after the personal excellence. When I'm able to shift my perspective off of like how good am I relative to other people to how good at this thing can I get? I want to be as excellent at this thing as humanly possible for me. And it just it puts the blinders on. So I'm no longer concerned about how strong is this dude or this girl or whatever is going on. It's just like, no. Like just focus on my personal excellence and me trying to get as great at this thing as I can get. And that was something that I was able to shift my mindset from. And I'm so glad I did before I ran 2:04 in Boston, because I ran the fourth fastest time ever run at the Boston Marathon in 125 years or however long it's been. And yet I finished fourth place that day. You know, I'm the fourth fastest person to ever run the race. Possible, you know? And like beating the two Kenyans and the one Ethiopian in front of me. It was about me like seeing how good I could do that day in those conditions on that course in that competition. Like I shifted my perspective, my competitors, from people I was trying to beat to people that I'm actually trying to bring out the best in them. And they're trying to bring out the best in me. Like we are supposed to use each other to bring out the best in each other. Like that's to me, that's what healthy competition is, right? Inspiration. Like pushing each other.
Actually, it's interesting. The previous guest, the last guest we had on was Jack Foltz, who had won the 76 Boston Marathon. And one of the things that Jack said was the other people out on the course, those weren't my competitors. They were helping me. They were giving me something to chase. I was giving them something to chase.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like a saying,
that's what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's like the Kenyan mentality. They have this saying. I can't say it in Swahili, but it's basically like we're all in this together. And that's really it's a beautiful way to do competition. Like it's so much fun that way. Then you can encourage your competitors. You can have goodwill towards your competitors. There's none of this like I just want to beat you and I hate you and and that does not feel good in here. Like I don't know about you guys, but when I'm like that, like I don't like that. That doesn't feel great, whether I win or lose. But when like I have goodwill towards my competitors, I'm like, man, I just want to roll with these guys. Like let's go get this, guys. And it's funny when I'm out there, if I start encouraging people around me, I start feeling better. Like it just
Yeah.
encourages
Yeah.
myself, Like I've experienced that at the professional level. I experienced it this last weekend when I was doing this ultra. Like as I was chatting with people out there and just being like, "Man, you're crushing it. Good job, brother. Like keep it up." Like I'd feel better after that, right? Like I think
Yeah.
that's how we're meant to do life, how we're meant to do competition is like we're meant to encourage each other. And when we do, it charges us too, right? It's like that proverb that says like as a man waters, I don't know if it's a proverb or what, but like as a man waters, so he too shall be watered. It's right. So it's
Hmm.
like when we're
Yeah.
watering someone else, we actually are watering our own soul, our own spirit. And
Sure.
it's so
What you
competition
give
is
away,
so
you get
fulfilling
in
that way.
return.
Yeah,
If you
exactly.
give it with your whole heart, and then it
Yeah.
comes back to you with whole heart.
Yep. And then, so there's those two. And then I'd say just last thing is just, man, life is so precious. Like don't wish away today because your eyes are set so much on your future goals. And I think, being present is a really big theme in our culture right now, as
Hmm.
it should be. I'm so glad that it is. And it's been a really good reminder to me as someone who is extremely driven by goals to not lose sight of today. And, you can be so focused on that mountaintop that you're missing this beautiful sunrise that's happening right here, right next to you, right now. So I try to remind myself of that as well. It's like, when I get to the top of the mountain, it's always a false summit, our performance goals, or at least it was for me. It's like you
Hmm.
get there and you're like, maybe just a little bit further. I can just go a little bit past this point, a little bit higher. Like it's like Jim Carrey said. It's like chasing the wind. Like you're never gonna catch it, right? It's like I
Yeah.
think he said like
Yeah.
I wish that everyone would be able to be as famous as they wanted, accomplish all their dreams, so that they could see that like that's not it. It's all about like the journey and just like appreciating this moment that we find ourselves in.
That's that's a great thought. Appreciating the journey and in the moment we're in. That's where value is in this life.
Yeah, I mean that's all we can be, right? I mean that's all we can experience. We can't experience previous moments. We can't experience future moments. So like, might as well like just soak in this moment as much as possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is the best moment in life.
It is. It is this one, and then this one, and this one that we find ourselves in. Wherever we find ourselves, it is the best one.
Absolutely. Well, Ryan, it's been a great pleasure catching up and talking this afternoon.
Been super fun. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, would love to sync up again at some point in time in the future and continue the conversation. But for today, I'll say thank you. And are you headed out to? Are you headed out to? Well, I guess you did your lifting in the morning. What you must be taking the girls out to do something in the afternoon.
Yeah, Sarah's parents are in town, so I think we're gonna go explore and have a casual dinner somewhere tonight. And then Lily's 10th birthday is tomorrow, so I think she wants to ride some horses. So yeah, we're gonna have a little family weekend. Should be fun.
Some great moments.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. All right, Mark. Have a
sounds
good
good,
rest of your
Ryan.
day.
Thanks so much. Bye
Yeah,
bye now.
I'll talk to you later.
Bye bye. So that's been our the Good Bounce, the nuBound podcast with Ryan Hall. Thanks for staying with us and catch us again. Our next podcast is going to be on the 26th of September when we'll be joined by Soul Train. We have Jess Leffler, the founder of Soul Train. Soul Train is a running program for kids in the Boston City schools, and it's a great story. It's talking about, as Ryan said, how running, how athletics can be used as a way to give kids goals, give kids a long term view, and teach them how to persevere towards success. So come back and join us on the 26th. Once again, I'm Mark Connell, and I thank you for being here with us today. Bye bye now.